Just do some quick team updates. There really isn't anything to update as far as Connor, Sam, and Troy go. Connor's still working through his own process of potentially kind of reappealing or going after his medical redshirt year. Sam is still working through his shoulder injury, and Troy is still working through kind of a process between me and him. It could technically be labeled a suspension, but I think that's probably a pretty harsh term. It was just kind of I think a lot of things came to a head there at the Boise game, and independent of whether the Mountain West was going to suspend him or not, I just felt it was time for me to kind of intervene with him. And we're kind of still working through that process together. He is practicing with us right now. I don't think a return is necessarily imminent, but it's not out of the question or some really far off thing either. It's still a process we're working through internally. As far as our team goes, we're still just working really hard, practicing, still actually focusing a lot on us, trying to improve our team. That's really been a big theme here over the past few weeks with these 8 guys, has just been trying to really make these 8 the best they can possibly be, and just try and shore up whatever weaknesses we happen to have or keep kind of emerging as this season has unfolded. So practice yesterday when we got back, practice this morning, and a practice again this afternoon, just trying to keep working and keep instilling a strong work ethic in these guys. You know, a lot of people talk about this just being my first year and all the things that I want to do, and I had a litany of things I wanted to do. But if there's one thing I just want to impart on these young men as this season goes forward and eventually concludes, is just having a really strong work ethic and just being able to work really hard and understand that that's one thing we can always control, not only as a basketball player, as a basketball team, but just in life. We can't control a lot of other things, but we can control what we put into this. And I really wanted to make sure we increased our work capacity and our ability to just grind. So that's something we've been spending a lot of time on, growing. There's been some ups and downs on that. Just guys kind of understanding how much this really takes, at least how much it's going to take while I'm here. And but I do think we're growing in that regard. So I'm excited about that and kind of where that's going in the future. As far as Vegas goes, very good basketball team, very talented basketball team. They're not Fresno. They're obviously different, but they do remind me of Fresno just from a standpoint of being talented kind of at multiple positions on the floor. So, you know, I have a lot of respect for Coach Menzies. Obviously, used to work with him for quite a long time. We remain very close as friends. But just going into this game, it's really just going to be about our team and their team. I think they're much better than their conference record indicates. They've obviously had a bye week to probably kind of get some stuff together. So I think the Vegas team we see will probably be a little bit different than maybe the Vegas team that's kind of opened up conference play.
What do you want to see from Troy before you say, yeah, you want to be back ready to play?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, you know, Troy is a tremendous teammate. His teammates are all very supportive of him. I think love having him in the locker room, love having him on their team, and I feel that way. Troy just has some moments where his anger gets the best of him. It's happened in practice. It's happened in games. It's happened at some pretty inopportune moments. It's resulted, obviously, in some ejections. And I think the Boise game, when that happened, you know, we had actually had a practice, I think the week before, that was open to the media as well, and he just kind of had a little bit of an outburst there, and he just had some moments where he just hasn't been able to control himself. And at the Boise game, I just kind of felt to myself that, you know what, enough has happened where I need to step in, and I'm going to have to put some things in place before he's going to be allowed to compete again. Like I said, whether the Mountain West ended up coming down with a suspension, a one game, whatever, it didn't really matter. I felt it was just time. So, you know, I've kind of made him go through some things that he's still going through. And when I get to a point that I feel he's either done enough of those or made enough growth and it's time to maybe give him a chance to compete again, then I'll do that. Like I said, I don't feel like that's imminent. I don't think that's not happening for the UNLV game. But I don't think it's some far-off thing where he's never playing again or, you know, he's in this bad doghouse or anything like that. I think he has some things that he's working through himself as a young man. I want to be here to help him with that as a person, as a mentor. But at the same time, I'm also the coach of this basketball team, and I have to do what's best for the team. And I felt like some of his behaviors just were not becoming of what we want.
any part of what he's going through, what Sam's going through, are they impacted by the way the team's playing without them? Because it seems like things have almost kind of been an uptick since it happened.
Yeah, no, I think at this point, I've met with our eight. If you include Mike the walk-on, it becomes 9. And I've met with them quite frequently about how do they feel about these guys coming back to the team. And I want it to be as much their decision as mine as well. These 8 are giving it everything they got right now. I'm very appreciative of that. They've earned that right to kind of, go down their own path here. And part of what they think is going to impact those decisions as well.
How does, you talked to us about stop watch, movie fresh, that
Yep.
kind of thing. But you're playing 8 guys, you got 8
Yeah.
guys to play.
No question.
All right, is this a thing that's going to backfire on that large plan?
Yeah.
Guys?
It's a really good question. I'm kind of bound between what I said earlier and that if there's one thing I really want to impart on this basketball team this year when the season is over and we continue on going forward, I want them to understand how hard they're going to work and how much we're going to practice and that there are no days off and we work really, really hard here. So I've really tried to continue that and make that our focus, even amidst some of the defeat, even amidst some of the maybe bad stretches. I've tried to get them to take pride in, you know what, we're just going right back to the court and we're going right to work and we're going to watch film and we're going to work on our game. We're going to get better. We're not going to mope. We're not going to ask why. We're not going to do a lot of other things that maybe some of these guys have done in the past, wherever it is they've been. I really want them to just take pride in the fact that, hey, the only thing we can control is what we're going to put into this. Part of the reason we practiced yesterday when we got back is just we hadn't done that before. And, learning, hey, when we get back, it's not just the rest of the day is off. We're going right back to the gym, and we're going right back to working on things. So don't feel tired. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Don't feel anything. We have to go back to work. So that's, if anything, my number one priority. Now, with these 8, I obviously want to win basketball games. And over the last 3 games, I think we've really kind of scaled back what we do pressure-wise in the full court. I think it's helped us in some instances. I think it's hurt us in others. And that's kind of a very fine line that I'm going to have to kind of tread here as we go down the stretch or middle of the stretch into down the stretch. What can these 8 handle? Do we get a 9th guy back or not? Do we get a 10th guy back or not? How does that kind of impact the rest of this whole thing? But it's really hard for me. I took a day off last week. I felt like we really needed to do it. It was hard because I don't want them to get comfortable in that way. I want these guys to figure out we're going to work really, really hard here. So that balance is something that, like I said, it's a great question. It's something I kind of battle with every day. And I'm hopeful that we'll find a nice balance between what's best for this program and developing it and putting a foundation in place with what can we do to win the next basketball game, which right now happens to be UNLV.
What was your biggest takeaway from that Fresno game? And then you talked city practice yesterday. What was the main focus?
I would say I talked in here that San Jose theoretically was a good matchup for us. Air Force was theoretically a good matchup for us. I think Wyoming theoretically was a good matchup for us. Obviously, you have to go out and do it in practice. Theoretically, Fresno's probably not a great matchup for us. They have a lot of athletes. They're very good one-on-one players, and they can hurt us, and they hurt us defensively. So that's something that going forward, when we run into those teams that theoretically aren't good matchups for us, how much do we want to change? We had made kind of some changes going into that game. We made a few more changes in the game, but maybe not enough to give ourselves defensively the best chance to win. And that's something we're just going to have to keep tinkering with the rest of the year. We don't, and I talk to the guys all the time. We have a pretty much zero margin for error defensively. We don't have a big guy at the back of it. We don't have the one guy to say, hey, you just go guard him and we're good. We don't have a lot of defensive weapons. We have a lot of good offensive players that are still trying to kind of figure out themselves how to become good defensive players, and then me as a coach, how to put them all in the best place to succeed defensively. So I think Fresno exposed a lot of that. And we've played some really good teams that haven't. TCU didn't. Arizona didn't. We've played some pretty good teams that I went away going, you know what? Defensively, we weren't bad tonight. But Fresno was really probably the first team in a while that I think has really just kind of attacked us one-on-one and really exposed a lot of our errors. Not only player-wise, but coaching-wise as well.
In that game, they really penetrated and got a lot of point-blank shots.
Yep.
Is zone just
It's what I basically told those guys after the game. You know, for me as a coach, it'd be easy for me to say, let's just go zone. I think you've seen some teams in our league kind of do that. They kind of go through stretch and say, screw it, let's just play zone. For me right now, based on the things I'm trying to impart on these guys, it's really hard for me to just say, you know what, forget it. You can't play defense and we're just going to go play zone. I just think that's an easy way out. Now, that's not closing the door on it. That's not saying we don't practice it. That's not saying we don't talk about it. That's not saying that there's not going to potentially be a time and place for it. But I'm not ready to just kind of let these guys know, hey, by the way, if you're not good at something, we're just going to give up on it and go to something else. I really want to continue to work at it. We practice it. We train it. And I would like to see them succeed. No different than a lot of other things that have kind of come our way a little bit. I'm not ready to just kind of throw in the towel on playing man-to-man defense.
You talked about trying to protect Joe.
Yep.
Would a zone not do that?
You know, I think we've done a much better job of protecting him in man. We've made some adjustments to our man-to-man defense to kind of get him out of trouble spots. And I think he's done a pretty good job as well as far as learning what those trouble spots are. So I think we've done really a good job here of late keeping Joe out of foul trouble. Really, all the zone will do is just take us out of having to play one-on-one defense against very good players. And that's something that we have to think about going forward, for sure.
As somewhat of a follow-up to the Joe foul trouble issue, did you change anything when Sam took his personal game off? After Colorado, the splits on Joe's minutes on the floor and fouls per minute and all that were dramatically different. The first 9 games, I think it was like every 6 minutes he was fouling. Since that Colorado game when Sam took his game off and then you didn't know what the future was there, did you guys change something specifically to protect Joe from that point on?
Not from that point on. I would say about 3 games later we did. I'm trying to remember who we were all playing during that stretch. But the
Mexico State and Arizona.
it was Arizona. I think, to be honest with you, if there's anything I remember from the Colorado game was Joe, for whatever reason at that point, really bought in. And I remember our halftime and I remember our post game was probably the first time I ever heard Joe speak to his team, to the team, and everyone really listened and stood there and took it. And he said some really good things. And I remember even speaking to him afterwards, and I think everyone just kind of felt like, okay, like this is the first time we've had leadership this season. And I think a lot of people at that point saw like, okay, Joe's really trying to take the mantle here. I don't know basketball-wise when it really started to kind of come into him. I think it took a little bit longer. But I think from a mindset standpoint, for whatever reason at Colorado, Joe decided, you know what, I'm gonna go all in on this thing. So I think mentally it may have started to change for Joe there, but physically from a coaching perspective it took a few more games just because there was a lot going on around that time. And quite frankly, Joe wasn't playing at a level that I was overly worried about it. As Joe started to play a little bit better, was kind of like, okay, you know what, we've got to protect this guy.
I know you just basically got done saying you don't know for sure why he made that change, but do you think it might have had something to do with the sort of with the Sam situation? Because Colorado's when the Sam situation came to a head.
Yep.
And I think you guys all knew something.
Yeah, I mean, someone have to talk to Joe. He might have just been feeling some things at the time that there was a real need for something or a real gap in some things that were going on. I thought that game really itself wasn't awful as far as anything bad happening or anything negative happening on the bench or in a locker room, anything like that. But maybe just for whatever reason that was his time. But I remember the halftime, I remember the post game like it was yesterday because it was the first time we'd ever had a player on our team stand up and really kind of show some leadership and show some kind of allegiance to the team and allegiance to what we were trying to do as opposed to, something individually.
Was about that time, I mean, I know you're talking about the 8 over and over again, but how proud you are of this 8 and their buy-in. Are you guys a better team right now than you were at about that point when you were full strength?
It's really hard to kind of necessarily pick on certain guys or say that other guys are better or not. The reality is, numbers-wise, Sam and Troy were our lowest plus-minus guys. So regardless of what may they have been doing or not doing or their strengths and weaknesses, as a team, even to this day, I mean, the plus-minus is what it is. Now, it's a small sample size. Things can change over the course of the season. But that argument holds water from just a purely analytical standpoint. I don't sit here and say that Sam Logwa's not a very good player, Troy's not a very good player, or they can't potentially help us. But maybe given how things were going and where things were at mentally, maybe they weren't helping us to the degree that everyone would have hoped for at that point.
Coach, situation where you will try perhaps to front before him? Is he just too big to do that to? Or?
Yeah, we fronted all year. That's something we've done. You know, the only concern I have with Joe, I thought Fresno was maybe the first game in a while where I thought Joe looked a little tired. So we just got to be a little careful with Joe's minutes. We've been pushing him into the 30s here relatively consistently, and we're going Wednesday and Saturday and Wednesday and Saturday. And the thing with Joe is not even just from a foul trouble standpoint. We really need Joe. So I've got to be sensitive really to his minutes and making sure that we're not just killing Joe before this season gets out.
Coach, we played 19 games now, and I've noticed that, I know we're short on players obviously, but I noticed the minutes have really gone up for Malik and for Mathis, and Joe's pretty much stayed steady, but their points have gone up. They've really played well. They've shot well, these guys I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Joe's actually getting more assists in the last 5 games than he's ever got. He's gotten 4 and 4 and 4 and 3. So have they earned this then more now? Not because of the minus the players, but they've earned these points.
It's probably a little bit of both. I wouldn't sit here and say it's completely that because we are down to 8, so they are going to play more, but they've done more with those minutes. I thought McQuatch and Vlad both hit a wall about the same time. I think Vlad's still trying to work his way out of it. But I think about 3-4 games ago, McQuatch just started showing a little bit more pop. And I thought he had a little bit of a freshman lull there, but I think he's really battled back here lately. And it's been big for us. It's really helped us out because we need another guy up front to kind of continue to give us energy until we can either get Vlad going again or find another post player to kind of re-enter the lineup. We're just small up front. It's the way it goes. We knew that going into the season. Obviously, when Connor went down, we knew it even more. But it's just kind of part of who we are, and those guys are going to get great opportunities, and McQuatch has really taken the most of it. Anthony's shooting the ball at an unbelievable clip, one of the best shooters to date that I've ever coached. We have to get him shored up on the defensive end. We have to improve his plus-minus. We have to improve a lot of things. But from a shooting perspective, he brings a lot, and he's an amazing teammate. He is as good as we have. I love having him on this team, and I'm hopeful that he can kind of continue to kind of emerge and have a good season.
We've seen against Wyoming, and Tino went off. I mean, he didn't have as good a game. McNeil went off. Mathis and Joe been pretty steady. I mean, if you had that one shot, would Mathis be the guy that's going to take that shot?
You know, it's a good question. We talked after the Fresno game and just said, you know, guys, the reality is for us to do the things that we all want to do, everyone has to play well. That's just the reality of it. We have 8 bullets in the chamber, and we can't have one bullet not fire. Joe has to have a great game. The guards have to make shots. We have to stay out of foul trouble. The point guards can't turn over the ball. Whatever our top 5 or 6 things are, we have to nail on all of those to win a game at Fresno, to win a game in the Mountain West Conference Tournament, to win a game at UNLV. So I can't come back into the locker room and see that Joe played 14 minutes because he was in foul trouble, or Anthony Mathis went 0 for 6, or Chris or Antono had a 5-turnover game. We have to be able to hit on all those things, and I think that balance truly kind of gives us our best shot of winning. So I don't want to say, hey, this guy's going to have a great game, but I think we need all of them. That's just the reality of how many bullets we have in the gun.
Is there a formula to get off to a better start?
You know, we've had some really, really poor offensive starts here, particularly like Air Force, I think, was 2-0 at the media. I think San Jose was the same way. We've had some offensive starts to the game where we haven't started off great. It's more about the defense to me. You can't always predict. The first 2 shots against Fresno, one was a wide-open layup we missed, one was a wide-open 3 it goes in. Like, those were 2 really, really good shots. The next 2 shots weren't very good. We can control the quality of the shot. As long as they're quality shots that we like, we'll take them. If you look at the Fresno game as a whole, to shoot over 50% on the road, I feel good about what we did. Are there going to be some lulls with our lack of size and our lack of certain things? Of course there are. But I think overall, we're having a pretty good offensive year. It's going to be a question of can we guard, particularly to start games, to get into a good rhythm defensively and not give another team confidence. I thought we did that against Air Force. I thought we did that against San Jose. We didn't do that against Fresno. And that start to the game for us defensively just got Fresno in a rhythm. We just, quite frankly, couldn't get them out of the rest of the game.
How much of what Marvin's doing on the court was he doing when you were there?
A decent amount. I'd say a decent amount. They obviously have really good bigs. We always had good bigs at New Mexico State. I think that they try and do a good job of getting them the ball and playing inside out. They're doing a very good job of getting to the free throw line. He plays faster probably than we did at New Mexico State. They really get out and try and run and get some stuff going that way. Defensively, we played so many different ways at New Mexico State. It's a little different, but it's probably similar to some of the years we had some really big guys and they were trying to protect them and keep them out of the way. So there's some similarities there. I wouldn't say identical. They obviously have a different coaching staff, different input that he's getting, and different players. So they have to do different things. But overall, when I see them play, I see some similarities for sure.
What's the closest you've had to coaching against a colleague like this is going to be? I mean, nothing quite like this, I know, but.
Yeah, no, when Marv got sick and I coached against Steve here, probably would have been the other time. Yeah.
So I'm guessing going up against, I mean, any matchup, you're always trying to figure out like what's going to happen, what's going to happen. Now you're going up against a guy you've been pretty close with. Is
Sure.
that going to make it a little tougher for you? Like,
Yeah, he texted me a few days ago saying he really doesn't want to play the game because somebody has to lose. I don't know. I've been asked this question a lot in different ways. Like, are you nervous about your first game as a head coach, the first game of the pit or whatever? I really don't look at games like that. I go out, I try and coach this team the best I can, focus on what I can control. I don't really think much about fans or kind of auxiliary things. And that's really not just a token response. It's the truth. I go into games, and if I even start to think about things like that, I have to recenter myself and say, Paul, you got to coach this team. What do we need to do right now? What's going on in the game? How can we adjust? Who's on the bench? Who's in the game? What can we call? Like, that's my job when I'm out there, is to be constantly thinking about the game and what I can do to best coach that game. If I start worrying about things that are going on, who a coach is, who a fan is, where we are, all those other things, it just takes away my ability to coach. And that's just not something, like I said, even if for whatever reason I drifted into that place, and I think since I've become a head coach, I don't know if I ever have, but if for whatever reason I did, I've just got to get myself recentered and refocused again.
You're an advantage sitting alongside him for so many years, kind of knowing what he's going to do with a certain media timeout or something like that.
He probably knows more about me than I know about him, to be honest with you. So I don't think it's an advantage for me. It'd be just as much of an advantage for him knowing me and knowing, all the things that I do as well. So I think they probably offset each other.
What about Kuiper and his knee?
Getting better.
better?
Yeah. We were a little worried there that he might have a tear, but the MRI was clean. It's tendonitis, and I think something with his IT band. But the worst day would have been Wyoming, and the following day, and it's been progressively getting better ever since.
Do you have to give him some rest during practice at all? Or?
No, he's actually fought through it. He's been awesome. And I've asked him if he's wanted rest, and he hasn't taken it. So it's good. I asked him this morning, and it's the best it's been really since it started swelling up. So hopefully we'll get him back to 100% quickly.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.